Hello, Michael Bay Area Hiking Guides. In this video, we're going to talk about why Brushy Peak is so sacred. Welcome back, Bay Area Hiking Guides, once again. So, why is Brushy Peak so sacred? What is it about Brushy Peak that makes it a sacred place? And why won't they allow people to go up to the top of the peak? You know, this park opened up in 2005. There's so many awesome historical things that happened in this park. So we're going to go ahead and send you over to Beth, and she's going to talk a little bit more about it, and also some of the other history that has to do with this park.
Hi, this is Beth at Bay Area Hiking Guides, and we are up here in Brushy Peak in Livermore. And an interesting thing about this park is this land was sacred. This peak is considered sacred to three Native American tribes that lived around this area: the Miwoks, the Ohlone, and the Yokuts. This area was used as a trade route, and they held ceremonies, social, economic, and ceremonial events here. And you're not even allowed to go to the peak here because the Ohlone, the Native Americans consider it sacred. So the park district does not let you go to the peak here. And another interesting thing about the history of this park is in the gold rush, the famous Mexican bandit Joaquin Murrieta used to hide out here. So that's also very interesting. It's a beautiful area. So thank you.
Joaquin Murrieta, who was a famous bandit, they used to have him and all of his buddies up here. You can, coming up here, you can see and just vision the shootouts they probably had. You know, hiding behind the rocks and having to boom, 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 boom. I mean, and in this stuff, you're gonna have the bullets are gonna come through and they're gonna just bounce off the rocks. So you got all that protection there, and there's so many rocks. Wherever shootouts happened up here, I'm pretty sure they were pretty eventful and definitely dramatic. Don't forget, guys, like, subscribe, hit that bell button. We love you so much. Thanks for checking out the channel. So welcome to the next section. I wanted to go through a brief history of Joaquin Murrieta. I was so fascinated by him, and if you look at all the outcroppings of rocks in the oak trees, it just looks like an awesome location to have a Western movie or a Western shootout. So during the territory being occupied by United States, and there was gold discovered. So you can imagine the outrage that the Mexicans had of this. So Joaquin Murrieta was one of them, and he was accused of stealing a mule, and because he had stolen a mule, they hung his brother and gang raped his wife and then eventually killed her. So you can imagine the anger and frustration that he had of Americans in general. So he killed and went on a rampage of killing anybody that had any affiliation with his brother's death or his wife's death, and went on this blood rampage. Picture of him, you can see he's not somebody that you would want dating your daughter, and he was not the most attractive person. He is actually the inspiration of Zorro movies, as Zorro is actually inspired by Joaquin Murrieta. Now, he does not look like a Antonio Banderas in any means, but funny nonetheless. But he was actually considered the Robin Hood of Mexico. So he did a lot of good, hit out with his gang of buddies. It's not like Zorro where it was a solo man wearing a mask. He had a pretty large amount of guys that were protecting him, as well as Three-Finger Jack. They went up and hunted for these guys, and California formed the California Rangers. The California Rangers were formed, and they went up there, and they were amongst the Mexican-American war veterans as well as Texas Rangers. They all formed together this small, tight-knit group to go up and hunt him down. So when they finally found him and killed him, it was actually in Kalinga, and they killed him. Kalinga is located in California. It's right off, I think, 198. You know, you can drive up, they actually got a plaque of his death. But when these guys actually ended up killing him, They cut off his head, put it in a big jar full of alcohol, and then they cut off the hand, which they also put in alcohol, of Three Finger Jack. Now, they brought this to several locations, Stockton, Sacramento, San Francisco, and they were telling people, hey, if you want to go and see the head of Joaquin Murrieta, you can take a look. And they'll charge $1. So they were already getting $5,000 by the United States for killing Joaquin Murrieta for his wanted reward. So as they continued on, it ended up in San Francisco, and then we had the 1906 earthquake. It got destroyed, and we don't have any evidence of it anymore. Now, back then, they didn't really have all the DNA labs and the crazy stuff that we have now. And then about 25 years later, people had basically clarified that he was still alive. So no one really knows if that was actually his head, and if he actually was still alive. It would make for a really interesting movie, because it's got a really good mysterious